everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Heartland Franchise Guide, your insider's guide to all things franchising in the local area. I'm Blake Martin, local small business franchise owner, and your Heartland Franchise Guide. This is the place for advocacy, resources, and education on all things franchising and small business entrepreneurship in the local area. And it's a great place for anybody who's an entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur to stop by if they just want to learn more about the franchising and small business industry. Speaking of anything in the franchising and small business industry, we're going to talk about something that impacts many micro entrepreneur enterprises. Our guest today is Regina Krebs, CPA, here to talk to us about the Nebraska Advantage Microenterprise Tax Credit. Try saying that 7 times real fast. Regina, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. So this is the part where I get to look down and do a little bit on your bio and embarrass you a little bit. So Regina is a recognized expert, has literally testified in the state capitol on the passage, renewal, and the details of this microenterprise tax credit. I'm just going to call it that for now. We'll give it its nickname, right? Microenterprise tax credit.
Yep, absolutely.
And so Regina has spoken on this repeatedly, has done presentations on it, and as I said, served as an expert witness. Needless to say, a good person to go to if you want to know more about this particular piece of legislation, and this tax credit. So, very happy to have you here today.
Thank you.
And I'm going to start by asking you, can you describe in relative layman's terms, what is the Nebraska Advantage Microenterprise Tax Credit?
It is a tax credit that's been on the books for a little over 15 years now. Nebraska had put together their Advantage economic development programs, and this was part of it. The other parts of it really served the bigger business sections, utilities, livestock operations, but this one they tailored specifically for startups and micro businesses, which the state describes a micro business as 5 employees or less.
Gotcha. Well, you just answered my next question.
So
nice work. Just like a CPA, being very detailed with the first question, predicting the next one. So
yeah, and it's five full-time equivalent employees. So you can have 10 employees as long as they don't equal full-time equivalency.
And full-time equivalency in this case is how many hours a week or month? 20-40?
Yep, okay. 40 hours a week.
Gotcha. Thank you. And so you need to be based in or doing business in the state of Nebraska?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other qualifications that people should know about?
That is really it. There's a few qualifications. When you're dealing with microenterprise tax credits and you're the entrepreneurs, the other qualifications, you own the business. You're involved in the day-to-day operations, management decisions, really kind of fall into place. So,
gotcha. And then just to back up a little bit, this is going back to your very first days of accounting, but I'm going to ask you to come into my world a little bit here. Talk to me a little bit about what a tax credit is in a circumstance like this.
Right. So in the tax world, we've got different things. You can have a deduction, and those take off. So you've got your gross income. The tax deduction takes off of that gross income before you get to taxable income. Your taxes due are calculated on that taxable income.
Right.
So the tax credit comes in at the other layer. Once you've established your tax bill, the tax credit basically helps you pay that tax bill. So it's a direct dollar for dollar credit off of your taxes due.
Going right to the bottom, literally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So
thank you for explaining that in terms that I could understand.
You're welcome.
Now, you've worked with a lot of clients. Obviously, we're not going to ask you to release anything confidential, but you've worked with a lot of clients who've successfully obtained this tax credit. What does the tax credit potentially look like? Like, is there a maximum, a minimum? And, well, let me just start with that question.
There really is no minimum on the tax credit. The maximum is $20,000 in tax credits, which is calculated on, it's a 20% tax credit. So basically, in a nutshell, if you spend $10,000 on qualified expansion business expenses, you get $20,000 back. That would be the maximum. But, certainly when we're dealing with small businesses, they haven't put a floor or a minimum on it other than obviously the economics of applying for and obtaining the credit.
Well, and $20,000 is no chump change, let alone $10,000 for a micro-size or startup business.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I've dealt with businesses that, $40,000 or $50,000 worth of business expenses was a lot for them. Mm-hmm. So, the $10,000 that they got back was certainly a huge help.
And then tell me about, obviously there's a reason you're involved in this. It's probably not simple to get a tax credit. What does the process look like, and when can you apply for it?
So the application period for the microbusiness is open from basically January 1st through November 1st of the current year. So applications are being accepted now for expenditures that will be or have been made for 2023.
Gotcha. Yeah, so we're recording this in January of 23, just a couple weeks into the year, and it's right now you can already do it for the current tax year or start tracking it.
Yes, and it's a 2-year program, so if you don't get the expenses met in 2023, you can carry that over to 2024.
Oh, okay, good. So a little bit of a gimme, almost a mulligan.
Yeah.
What does the process look like? So you're dealing with the Department of Revenue. They always make everything really easy and use really simple language. So it's just, just kind of snap your fingers and get the whole thing done, right?
They have actually simplified this process.
Yeah.
So there's an application on the website that you can go fill out. The application itself isn't difficult. I think it's probably understanding what they're looking for on the application, the underlying information, and how you can use that information to your advantage. So, but yeah, other than filling out the application, they'll review the application and they'll issue tax credits. They will send a letter out and says you've been reserved X number of dollars of tax credits. Mm-hmm. And then when you go to file your income tax the following year, so again, next March, you can take the expenditures, and we have to file those and tell the department what we spent the money on. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest things for some of my small businesses are keeping the receipts.
Yeah.
Because you have to send in all the receipts for that. So, and they will basically take all of that. They'll audit the receipts, the expenditures, and send you a check or a direct deposit.
Gotcha. Any estimation on, so if you submit the application and then you said you actually get a verification back virtually via email, et cetera, roughly how much time it takes to get that back from the state?
They've been processing the applications in less than a month.
Oh, okay.
So the tax credits, to get the tax credit back, may be a little bit longer. Those are kind of dependent on the department's resources. So like I said, they actually audit those receipts and expenditures. And it depends on how much you have. I've got a business that purchased a new building for $120,000 or whatever. Yep. That's met the maximum. There's really only 5 sheets of paper that you need to turn in to collect that $20,000. It gets to be a little bit more complicated if you're collecting the credit for payroll wages or, advertising expenditures, stuff that takes a lot of transactions to get to that $100,000.
That makes a lot more sense. I'm glad you clarified because I was thinking you were going to go the other direction on that. So,
yeah.
Are there any, I'm not sure which way to ask this question. Is it easier to say what are not qualified expenses or what are qualified expenses?
Probably what are qualified expenses. So the qualified expenses would be advertising, new employees, or an expansion on your workforce.
Podcasting expenses, can you file those?
For advertising?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
all right.
Absolutely. And new equipment, so depreciable assets or real estate, building purchases. Okay. And the other one that may require a little bit of more tax planning, but lease payments. So if you don't buy a building, you can still get the credit by leasing or renting.
So there is a broad array of expenses
Yes.
that qualify for this.
Yes.
That's
And
really
professional fees if you have to hire an attorney or an accountant.
Okay.
Those are also qualified expenses.
Nice. Thanks for getting that in there.
Yes.
What are there any categories of business that by category don't qualify for this outside of the size of the business, the 5 or less employees, so on and so forth?
Not really. Most of them will qualify. So some business structures are a little bit more complicated. I've had a question on a co-op that has, 50 different owners in it, whether or not we can get that qualified. But most of your run-of-the-mill basic general startups will qualify. So, and I know I've had a few issues with real estate agents. There's some special rules for them out there. So.
Okay. All right. So maybe reach out to, this is a good spot to give you a little cameo for how to get in touch with you, because there are going to be those that are always a little bit more complicated by the nature of the tax credit, like realtors who want to know if they can. So how does somebody get a hold of you in Neely, Nebraska? That's where you're based, right?
Yes, yes.
How does somebody get a hold of you if they want to ask some questions about this?
Usually phone call or email.
All right.
So.
Can you give our audience the email and phone number?
My email address is Regina, REGINA, at Krebs, CPAtax.com. So KREB as in boy, S as in Sam, CPAtax.com. And my phone number is 402-887-5475.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's really our test, to see how many people listen to this and download it, and see how many phone calls you get. No, we really appreciate that, Regina. I know you're already very busy, so volunteering your time to answer questions for people is fantastic. Common mistakes. So folks that are, I'm sure there's some people that go through a CPA like you, and maybe others who try to fill this out for the first time themselves, and maybe even because they have some accounting background. Mm-hmm. Are there common mistakes that people need to be wary of, or things that you see, reasons for rejections from the state?
Right. And one of the biggest things is just the timing, because this is an expansion-based credit. Mm-hmm. What we're looking at are the definitions of what creates expansion. So we'd be looking at, if it's an existing business, we would be looking at what did you do last year. Mm-hmm. So those are a lot of the details that could possibly create a hiccup, I guess, as far as making sure that those calculations are correct. But it also presents an opportunity to do some tax planning or tax credit planning.
Right.
As far as how do those get classified, and, when do I spend the money? Do I do everything in December, or do I roll that over and do that in January?
Right. So
there's definitely some opportunity to do some timing planning.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Speaking of timing planning, I had never heard, until I ran into you, I had never heard of or didn't understand the intricacies of the Nebraska Advantage Microenterprise tax credit. And I'm sure not all CPAs can stay up to speed on all things that are accounting rules. Are you running into situations where somebody has a CPA or somebody has an accountant, and you're able to assist with kind of subject matter expert subcontracting, so to speak, I guess, helping the accountant help their client?
Yes. I've done several instances of that, actually, because I've had people that come up to me and, their CPA isn't kept up on this, and it's kind of a specialized area. Like I said,
it doesn't seem like the state's really advertising. I'm not seeing any billboards on Interstate 80 or anything talking about this.
Right. No, and they really aren't, which was one of our issues when I was down there testifying at the state legislature. But at the same time, right or wrong, this program isn't handled through the Department of Economic Development. Because it's a tax credit, it's handled through the Department of Revenue, which really isn't their job to go out and advertise. So.
Yeah. And I wouldn't imagine that there's a whole host of folks with marketing degrees or experience in that department either.
Probably not.
Which is why they're very good at what they do, needless to say.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and they needed a department to, like I said, handle the numbers, handle the audit portion of the tax credit. But I think they need to get some more involvement from the Department of Economic Development. So,
is this one of those credits where if you snooze, you lose? Like, can the money run out? Is there a specific amount of money that's allocated each year? And if you wait too long, it might be gone, even if you qualify for it?
Yes. So there's at least $2 million every year.
Okay.
Anything above the $2 million depends on what's happened the year prior. It can be as much as $4 million. So,
okay.
But this year for 2023, I just looked up the authorization table here about a week ago, and it looked like there's $2.3 million available.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, but yes, it is a first come, first serve based on that number. So,
do you know if are there other states in the U.S.? So the one that we're talking about is specific to Nebraska. Obviously, it's the Nebraska Advantage Enterprise Microenterprise tax credit. Are you aware of other states that have similar types of programs for micro businesses?
I am not personally,
okay.
But in the middle of Nebraska, I haven't had to deal with.
That might be our next podcast.
Maybe.
I'll find somebody who's an expert on all things. Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. But probably worth the while of somebody if this exists here. I mean, states do replicate successful programs, especially if they're neighboring states. So if you have a accountant or CPA that you're relying upon and strategizing with, particularly at the beginning of the year, it's something to be thinking about. Is there anything like this for
you? Yeah, right. Exactly. My sister's doing a startup business, and that was the first place that I told her, go check, the Department of Revenue, the Department of Economic Development, just see what is out there specific for that state.
Yeah, so definitely. What else? You're the expert on this. I'm just throwing the questions out. Anything that we missed, other important things that people should know about this tax credit that we haven't really delved into yet? She's looking at the actual application.
I'm looking at the actual application. Yep, this is the application. I don't think there's a whole lot in there. Like I said, a lot of the details, you have to be registered for all of Nebraska's programs. Mm-hmm. So you have to be fully registered for sales tax, and if you have any employees, obviously employee tax.
And if you're not incorporated, forget it, right?
What's that?
If you're not incorporated as an entity?
No. Sole proprietors can do this.
Okay, thank you.
So, yes.
All right.
Yep. Nope.
Sole proprietors, LLCs, S-corps.
Corporations, yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. And like I said, we're even looking into the possibility of doing something for a co-op. So.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But, the only thing that has, come up with some of my business owners that has employees anyway is the requirement to use E-Verify.
Okay.
And which is a federal program. Mm-hmm. So they have, the business owners are business owners doing what they do best. So going into the federal government to sign up for a program like that is a little bit outside of their forte. Mm-hmm. So what I've done with most of my clients is I actually have a reporting agent account on E-Verify. So
you can just kind of set it up with them.
Correct. Yep. Which isn't a big deal. Like I told them, whenever they get a new employee, just ship me the I-9 and I'll run it through and make sure that they're in compliance with that. Because that is a very time-sensitive thing. You have 3 days from the hire date of the employee to get them run through E-Verify.
Yeah. And in the case of this, if you want to apply for this, it's have to utilize it when you're screening a new. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Very good nugget of information there. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. So another great, even if you have an accountant or CPA that is very well versed on programs, little details like that might be where you can come in and say, hey, I've been there, done that. I can get you compliant with it.
Yes, absolutely.
Not stepping on their existing CPA's toes.
Yep. Nope.
Yep. We can all work nicely together, right?
We can, yes.
Yeah. Well, Regina, I really appreciate you being here today. This has been very helpful. granted, I haven't said this out loud, but I mean, we focus a lot of energy on franchises, but needless to say, this is something that any business can qualify for, any small business, as long as they meet the criteria that you discussed, franchised or not. Yep. So we appreciate you being along for the ride. Again, this is Regina Krebs CPA, based in Neely, Nebraska, but works all across the state, and I appreciate your expertise. And by the way, I appreciate the advocacy on behalf of all small businesses, the time and energy that you're not getting paid for, the time and energy that you're putting into advocating at the state level, within the state legislature, to ensure that this continues to get funded and even perhaps more graciously funded. So thank you for doing that on behalf of all of us.
Well, thank you. Yep, nope, I appreciate it. And yeah, it's a personal passion of mine. So
clearly. And I'm going to ask you one more question as we wrap up. How did you stumble into this? What was your first entrance into this tax credit?
So my first entrance into this tax credit is they mentioned it one time on my tax continuing education courses.
No kidding.
Yes. And they said the Department of Revenue was there. They usually concentrate on sales tax. And they said, oh, yeah, we got this new program in. So I went and looked at it and kind of built it up. I've been involved in economic development for 20 years. And it kind of fell right in with, the LB 840 programs in the small communities are an economic funding device. And that's where I kind of helped them wrap up everything in a package deal that small businesses or farmers, with FSA, you pull from
what's FSA?
Farm Service Agency.
Thank you.
So, you can pull from all of these different sources to help small businesses. And I, just really wanted to make sure that our local area had that information. And so...
And now, it just grew from there.
And now, hopefully, the state, yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm glad we have you dominating that niche here in our state. So. We appreciate it. Regina, thanks again for joining us today. Really appreciate this. And thanks to all of you for joining us on another episode of the Heartland Franchise Guy. Remember, you got the QR code on the bottom of your screen, so if you have any questions about this Nebraska Advantage Microenterprise Tax Credit and you want to get a hold of Regina, just scan that QR code and get in touch with us, and we will be more than happy to make that happen for you. And, of course, don't keep this episode a secret or any of our episodes a secret. Subscribe, follow, and share, particularly if you know somebody, including a spouse or significant other, who may very well qualify for this. The early bird does get the worm on a program like this where the money can eventually run out. So the sooner you know and the sooner you're sure that you are doing what is necessary to comply with the filing requirements, the better shape you'll be and the better chance you have of getting this tax credit. So thanks to all of you for joining us again. Subscribe, follow, and share us, and we will see you here again soon on another episode of the Heartland Franchise Guy.